to the Dream Journal. From the studios of KSQD in Santa Cruz, the Dream Journal is a weekly show where we explore the healing powers of nighttime dreams through conversations with dream experts and with you.
Time is keenly found. We are not alone. Water over stone, even if you're by yourself. Even if you're by yourself.
In the words of Carl Jung, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. Today's music is called Some Nam Narration. The narration of sleep. That sounds a bit like a dream, doesn't it? DreamStar Free Online Counseling, using dreams in therapy, and her experiences with Dream Telepathy. Our conversation this week is with Professor Suzanne Maniss of U Texas, Rio Grande. I am your host, Catherine Bell, of Experiential Dreamwork, and welcome to the Dream Journal. The Dream Journal is also a weekly podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review, but most importantly, tell your friends. This is the mission of the show, really, is to get people talking about their dreams, and one way you could do that is to mention this podcast you've been listening to. If you want to catch up, you can go to any podcast platform, Apple, Google, Spotify. You can also get the archives at ksqd.org/the-dream-journal. Okay, started with my personal dream work. So, okay, dreams do go there. They do go there. And I had a dream recently, just a few days ago, actually, I'm watching this couple who are making love, and they're maybe late 20s or something like that, this young couple. And the woman is menstruating. And there is something about that... it's just, it's messy and it's true and it's intimate, just like dreams. All right, Dr. Suzanne Maniss is professor and chair of the Department of Counseling at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. Suzanne is a licensed professional counselor associate and first became interested in dreams with several of her classmates during her graduate studies. As a result, she spent 10 years in Jungian analysis. Throughout her academic career, Dr. Maniss has found that students are very interested in dream work and has been able to share basic theories and techniques through elective courses and professional development workshops in the community. Most recently, she has collaborated with Dr. Scott Sparrow to bring these ideas to the students at UTRGV. You can find our guest at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Counseling Center webpage. I met Suzanne Maniss at the IASD conference in Tucson last year, and she was working, I guess still is working, with Dr. Scott Sparrow about the DreamStar method of Dreamwork. And I was just fascinated by her ability to explain that method. Welcome, Dr. Maniss. Hello. Hey,
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. You sound wonderful. Glad to have you.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
All right. Well, I know you're calling from Texas, and I wanted to find out about some of your experiences around dreaming. Like, what first got you interested in dreaming? What was the first thing that kind of caught your attention? Often there's like an early dream or some family experience that kind of wakes us up to the interest in dreams. What was your early experience?
I don't really remember anything from my family particularly. I've always dreamed, and I've always enjoyed thinking about them or exploring them, but it wasn't until I got into my graduate work, my doctoral degree actually, that I had a professor whose research interests and clinical practice interests were centered around dream work, and he would share that with those of us in the program from time to time, and several of us decided that we wanted to know more about it. And we asked him to do a kind of a workshop for us, and he did for about 6 weeks. Actually, it became a seminar, and that was my first exposure. And after that, I just began reading and listening to other things, and it went from there.
Okay, so it was fairly late. A lot of people learn about these things when they're kids or teens or anything, but that was something that, what is it that spoke to you about it? Like, what was it that made you think that this was something that you would want to study?
I think it was once we talked about it a little bit, and I started thinking about the dreams that I was having and playing with them just a little bit. The amount of insight that I gained from it was something that was significant, and it was rewarding in and of itself for me at that time. They encourage you when you're in a behavioral health area, psychology, counseling, social work, to do your own therapy so that you're in a better place when you work with clients. And that was my mindset at the time, and I was actually doing some work, and this just seemed to be a good addition to it.
Right, because you are the chair of the counseling department there over at U Texas. That's right.
Yes.
Yeah. And yet, oh, sorry, go ahead.
The University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, yes.
Okay. UTRGV, yes. So I have noticed that in most counseling degrees, dreaming is not a major component, or at least it's my understanding. You're the professional. This is my understanding is that the dreaming is not a major component of the training that counselors receive when they are studying how to work with people. Do you have any thoughts about that?
You're correct, and I think that's something that hopefully we'll begin to talk just a little bit more about in the rest of the time here. I heard an announcement or your comments about DreamStar. That is something that one of my faculty members does. So, no, counseling programs don't usually get into dream work. It was the domain of analysis, psychiatry, perhaps, for so long. And I think that that's changing, but it's not part of our licensure coursework or our accreditation coursework. And so it's something you really have to look for if you're interested.
Well, I've thought of kind of an analogy of this, that it's a bit like a medical doctors that when they study for years all about medication and surgery and anatomy and all that, but they have very, very little information on nutrition.
Exactly. That's a good analogy. Very good.
Right. And, there's something about dreaming that is kind of nourishing. As you say, it really does get to the heart of what's going on with somebody, and it can, and of course it's working behind the scenes, whether we ever remember a dream, much less work with a dream, and that there's something natural about dreaming, that dreaming evolved before humanity. The mammals
Absolutely.
seem to dream, and so there's something incredibly valuable about dreaming, and it seems to work whether we pay attention to dreams or not, and yet there is a value to bringing the dreaming into consciousness.
Very much so. It's very accessible for someone, even if you're not trained in, some kind of professional degree. You don't have to do that in order to be able to find meaning and to be able to use your dreams to, enrich your life.
Right. So I wonder if you can talk about training people to use dreams in counseling. I know that a lot of counselors and therapists are reluctant to open up dreaming. Well, let's start with that. Do you have any sense of why people are reluctant to bring dreaming into therapy?
I think it goes back to the idea that for counselors anyway, and even maybe psychologists and social workers, the work with dreams, whether you're thinking about Freud or Jung, was in analysis, the area of analysis, and that's not something we do. And so I think, again, most people didn't have the training, and also there was a mindset that, this is not in my discipline. This is not what I'm being trained to do. And so unless you then pursue some additional training, it just doesn't become part of your practice.
Right. Well, certainly in the realm of the cognitive behavioral therapy, that's very far from the psyche and from subjective, not subjective experience exactly, but, the inner work that is so integral to dreaming and analysis, as you say. And perhaps there's the cognitive behavioral therapy is a powerful tool, and it's maybe one of the dominant modes right now. Do you have any sense of how common that is? And I'm just curious about that. I know CBT was thought to be incredibly like a big breakthrough in the 90s in particular, but then it's kind of fallen a little bit more out of favor. What is your sense of CBT versus the more depth kind of way of working with folks?
That you've hit on something that probably is a point of contention, as well as an interesting thing for me as my experience as a clinician. When we start talking about reimbursement for counseling, for therapy, we are pushed towards what we are labeling as evidence-based practice or evidence-based interventions. And psychodynamic interventions, which Dreamwork often falls into, it's not just psychodynamic, but it tends to be, and it doesn't tend to fall into the structure of an evidence-based practice. So, again, that's another reason that a lot of people don't use it, because when your clients want to use their insurance or something, you're in a structure that the person that's paying needs to see evidence of improvement, it takes a long time to see that sometimes with Dreamwork. So that's one issue, yes. Another issue, though, is even we can use it even in a setting where you're using more cognitive work. That was one of the things that I talk to my students about a lot, is that CBT has a structure, but we can also use other things and bring that content, that dream content in. It's not an all or nothing thing for me when I work with students, or also when I work with clients, on helping them to understand that this is something that brings growth and that we can use it in addition to changing symptoms or reducing symptoms. And I use two analogies with them a lot of times. One is the whack-a-mole game, if you know what I'm talking about, like
yes.
at Chuck E. Cheese. Now, I don't want to offend any of your listeners who are CBT practitioners, but for a psychodynamic person or a person that believes that there is a lot underneath the outward symptom, sometimes using CBT is just kind of like playing whack-a-mole. You beat it down in one area, and it's inevitable that it will pop up in another area. So
that's a wonderful analogy. That's super helpful. I appreciate that, because you're really just treating the symptoms but not getting to the core of what's going on for the person.
Yes, and again, teaching students that, okay, we need to get the symptoms under control so that we can sometimes do the deeper work. So it's not that they have to abandon one or the other. We get the client to a place where they're able to maybe do some of the other kinds of work. So, yes.
You mentioned another analogy? Is there a second analogy?
Nope. It just blew my mind. Let me see if it'll come back.
Well, maybe give us a little example, because, I have read that clients do tend to rate sessions with their therapist highly when they're working dreams compared to when they don't work dreams. Like even in whatever regular therapy, I did a course of psychotherapy for a couple of years, 3-4 years, and certainly I really enjoyed the dreams. Were something that really kind of lit me up when I was in therapy, but it wasn't my therapist's main thing, so it kind of felt a little awkward to like be bringing out another dream. But there are ways to encourage people to bring dreams, and I wonder if you could just talk to us a little bit about how you talk to your students. Like, how do you recommend they introduce the idea of dreams? So I'm hoping I'm speaking to some therapists here as well as dream enthusiasts. So how would you encourage people to bring up dreams in the therapeutic environment?
we always need to be mindful of the things that are comfortable for our clients, and I'm thinking of examples like spirituality and not forcing our interest on them, but you can offer clients various options when you're talking to them about the things that they bring to the session, and suggest, we can approach this using this intervention. We could use, meaning dreams, we could use a sand tray, we could use art, we could use a variety of things, that obviously if the practitioner is trained in those areas. But what works for you? What appeals to you? Mm-hmm. How do you go about approaching things or solving things? And using our expertise as a structure, but also letting the clients have a say-so. And I think that's why maybe they respond a little bit better to interventions or the use of things like dreams, because they are able to talk rather than being told, well, let's change a habit, or let's change a specific behavior, without really looking at what's underneath that behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Right. As an example or analogy, again, I was thinking about, we've just started our new year. So many of us made New Year's resolutions. The most common one are always around, behavioral changes with eating or losing weight or something like that. Right. And that's a behavioral change that so many of us fail with, because we're not really that invested in the behavior. We need to look at what's underneath that and maybe understand, something, find a way that's motivating us to change that behavior, but that's more than the behavior. I don't know if that made sense exactly, but for me, the dreams are like going beyond just saying, I want to do something. It's getting a better sense or a better understanding of maybe why this behavior needs to be addressed.
Right. Getting to some of the roots of that behavior, whether an actual memory is presented or not, doesn't seem to really matter. But there's like almost metaphorical situations in dreams that seem to be really key motivations or catalysts for waking life behavior.
Absolutely, and it's fun to work with dreams as well. And I think the clients respond to that. There's fear sometimes about going into counseling or into therapy, and is the counselor going to tell me that I'm wrong, or tell me, oh, this is what's wrong with you, or something like that. And dreams seem a little bit less threatening, I think, as a way to approach or to get at some of the things that need to be talked about.
Right. Exactly. And is it difficult to learn? You mentioned that some counselors, if they're interested in including Dreamwork in their therapy, that they should take some courses. Or do you? What kind of things do you recommend? Is just reading a book or two sufficient, or just following your nose and asking questions? What do you recommend?
Generally we don't say that just reading a book or so is sufficient. Obviously, that's a good place to start. From an educator's perspective, is where I'm coming now, where I'm speaking. It's good to have the information, but we also need to practice under supervision. So having somebody help us, walk us through, supervise us as we're working with a client with a particular dream approach is always the best way to do it. So getting the education, but then also being supervised experientially. And there are lots of different approaches to working with dreams, so it doesn't have to be extensive. I know that when I first got interested in it, everybody that I was around were interested in the Jungian approach to dream analysis. Mm-hmm. And so I actually spent 10 years myself in Jungian analysis and started training as for being a Jungian analyst. But at that point in time in my life, I was a single mom with 2 preteens, and it can be pretty expensive and pretty daunting, pretty time-consuming also. Mm-hmm. And I realized that there's other kinds of training or education that you can get and still be competent. And so I switched directions sort of at that time.
Right. And so now I understand you're working with Dr. Scott Sparrow as having to do with his DreamStar technique. I wonder if you want to say a few words about that and how is that more approachable than Jungian therapy? I know Jungian therapy can be very elaborate.
Absolutely, with lots of different symbols and concepts. Scott has developed the 5-star method that he's actually sharing with our students, and it's much more accessible. And it's also more about process rather than some of the more traditional or historical, the older methods used things like symbols, and you would say, oh, well, if you dreamed about this, then that means whatever, which is kind of what we say, a cookbook approach.
Right, right.
And that, that doesn't always work. And Scott's approach is much easier for the students to understand and master, and it's much more accessible and user-friendly for clients as well, I think. It draws a lot from the client. It doesn't use the therapist or the clinician as the expert. It allows the client to be the expert about their lives and their experiences and the components of their dreams. And so you're constantly checking in with them. You may offer a thought, but you allow the client to test it and say, that does fit, or I don't think that's what this is. So that's one of the greatest things about Scott's the 5-star method, because it's so accessible both to clinicians and to clients.
Right. So is there a training program for counselors who want to get involved with the 5-star method, who want to be trained in this? Is that something that you and Scott offer?
This is something that Scott is working on. He has a website of his own, and in addition to the DreamStar website, which is the one, well, actually, you know what? His website is the DreamStar Institute, I believe it is. And then we have the DreamStar Free Online Counseling, which is what he offered at the beginning of the pandemic for our students to be able to continue with their clinical work when everything shut down and they couldn't be in the various agencies. He enabled us to go online. But his website, which is accessible through the International Association for the Study of Dreams, as well as just you can go straight to his website. He has courses and lots of different information, things that you can read and learn about. And he offers a certificate there on his website. And I believe he's tweaking that at this time with some other clinicians to update it. So that's something that will be coming soon. I spoke to him yesterday on the phone, and we were talking about it. I don't know the exact date on that, but the original one is there as well. So that is accessible to individuals who are interested in looking at the 5-star method. Excellent. And perhaps learning more about how to use it in their practice.
And that's the DreamStar Institute, and I will put the link in the show notes. And so that's for counselors and also for clients. The phrase is DreamStar Free Online Counseling. Can you really get free online counseling through this technique?
Yes,
this
you can.
process? Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Oh, great. Okay.
So. When Scott and I first started talking back in spring of 20, I told him, I said, we've got to do something quick. And with the bureaucracy in academia, it's good, and there are reasons for it, but it's like turning a ship in mid-ocean.
Yes.
It doesn't turn quickly, and we needed to be able to get our students into something where they could complete their experiential courses and continue seeing clients. Scott is incredibly knowledgeable about technology, and he already had these platforms going and was very willing to step right up and tweak it a little bit so that our students could continue seeing people virtually. And as part of it, he offered to teach them about the 5-star method, and as time went on, that was something that really took off. The clients were interested, our students were incredibly interested, and so that actually became a really strong focus with the online counseling. You can get counseling on that website that's not dream-related. You don't have to be interested in working with your dreams, but if you do want to, that's available as well. We do individual, or he does, individual as well as groups on that website pertaining to dreams. So you can do regular traditional counseling or something that's more dream-oriented.
Oh, fabulous. What a wonderful offering, especially now that I know that therapists are in high demand right now, and there's a lot of need for people to support our mental health. So.
Yes, and let me add something just for clarity. The clinicians on the website, our students, they're not licensed yet, but they are under the supervision of faculty that are licensed in our program, as well as Scott, who's licensed. And so they're constantly being supervised and in training and available to speak with any of us at any time when they have issues. But just for the public's knowledge or information, they are students in training under supervision.
Okay. Well, that's perfect. That sounds like a wonderful offering for sure. So we're almost to our break, and I want to get into, when we come back, I want to talk about your personal experiences. My guest today is Dr. Suzanne Maniss, and I want to hear a little bit about an experience of dream telepathy that I'm so curious about. And perhaps we might be willing to share a little bit about your own Jungian analysis and what that meant to you, or some recent dreams. Let's get a little more personal after the break. Okay, this is the Dream Journal. My name is Catherine Bell. My guest today is Dr. Suzanne Maniss, and we already do have a caller. And if I understand correctly, and I did want to get more personal after the break, that the caller is Dr. Maniss's son, Jeremy, from Dallas, Texas. Hello, Jeremy, you there?
Yes, ma'am, I am. Hello, how are you?
Fabulous. So glad to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Suzanne, thank you for inviting your family to call in. I think that's wonderful. So tell me a little bit about what you know about dreaming.
Well, I know it's an important and fun aspect of my life. I'm an overthinker, so it allows part of my brain to shut off, and probably the more efficient part of my brain to process things. Mm-hmm. Very symbolic in nature. Once I learned how to kind of dream journal and wake up and immediately jot some thoughts down and actually be able to remember a few of them, I guess the importance of them, to not get too wordy. That's about all I know. How much I enjoy trying to interpret them.
Well, that's a lot. I mean, that's really the key thing, is to see the benefit and to have the fun of it and appreciate what they are doing. So, did you talk much about dreaming when you were growing up with our guests?
It was, yeah. It was, yes, ma'am. My mother brought it up, I guess, probably about the third or fourth grade, and so on the way to school, we would have discussions. She gave me some habits, and we'd do some color sessions where we'd, draw photos, listen to music, but basically just practices to try to have that immediate recall before we get up and kind of forget what we dreamed about before our brain changed to different waves and forgot. So that was always kind of the fun thing, was knowing she was going to ask on the way to school what I dreamed about, and trying not to move or forget what it was I was just dreaming about before I came back to true consciousness.
It really is true, isn't it, that there's a very different kind of thinking that happens in the awake state. And when we're in that first waking up moment, we can preserve some of that dream consciousness, and that's when it's easiest to remember our dreams. So, in my circumstance, my son knew I was interested in dreaming, and he would not tell me a single dream. He was like, oh, no. Suzanne, I wonder if you could give some suggestions of how to make it a friendly and a fun kind of...
Well, let me share this with you, because I was reminded of this. Jeremy's being kind. I was driving him and his brother and some friends someplace one time, about this same age, maybe a little bit older, and I don't remember, I said something in the car, and I heard Jeremy turn around and look at one of his friends and say, I'm sorry, we have to do things this way. My mom is a counselor. And I think the dream thing was similar, in the sense that was something we did on the way to school in the morning, and it was fun, and I enjoyed talking to them, and I wanted to get them to the point where they would be introspective and they would use it as a tool to help them in their lives.
Yeah, well, it seems like you really established some good habits and some good appreciation for what's going on behind the scenes. So, Jeremy, do you still record your dreams and do some explorations with them now?
I definitely try. I find that as I've gotten older, I'm not quite as in tune, so I don't remember them near as often. I know when I do, I immediately jot it down, and I'll be like, hey, Mom, this is what happened, or, sometimes it's a recurring one, so you're kind of like, well, yeah, I remember what this meant last time. But when I do it, it's a highlight of the sleep session for me, and I definitely have some enjoyment in trying to figure out what it meant.
Yeah, there's something very satisfying about dreams. Even if we don't understand, when do we ever understand all the details? If we can catch it like a moment, a glimpse, that's a lot. But there's something fascinating, even when I'm sharing a dream and I have no clue what it relates to. There's just something satisfying knowing that it comes from me, and it's like kind of revealing something that's going on a deep level. That just is something that I really appreciate about dreaming.
Definitely, it's tapping into those processes that you don't use day to day, that you don't always know the command line or prompt to, but when they run the system way more efficiently than you can.
Well, yeah, it does touch into the subconscious, which is running things behind the scene for sure, like 90, 95, I don't know how you would even estimate such a thing, but most of what happens for us in waking life is orchestrated by our subconscious, so why not tune in a little?
Jeremy's being, he's not saying a lot about it. He actually enjoys mandalas, drawing, or using a kind of a meditative practice while he colors or paints one, draws one. Actually, my daughter-in-law got him into doing that. It wasn't even anything that she knew in terms of being related to exploration or anything. She just thought it was something interesting, and he's been able to utilize that as well. And I have begun talking with my granddaughter about dreams. What did you dream last night, Emily? What do you think that's about? My grandson's 4, so we're going to start those conversations as soon as he's ready. He doesn't slow down very much right now. So,
and what about you, Jeremy? Do you talk to your kids about their dreams too?
I do. I ask them any chance I get. My daughter's willing to share. She kind of knows Grandma Susu's the dream expert, so I think they do their FaceTime and go through that a little more than I get to. But
nice.
I definitely try. I defer expertise when it's available, so having my mom there, I don't try to be the counselor or interpreter unless I need to.
Right. But as we've been talking about, that you don't need to be elaborately trained to work with dreams. Just asking a lot of questions and really having faith that the dreamer is the one who knows is really helpful. And just by showing your interest in your own dreams and showing your interest in your children's dreams, I'm sure you're instilling some great habits of introspection. And Jeremy, you're in the midst of is it the second stage, the part of life where things are really involved in the world. And I think things will come back around again. I find most of the people that I see as clients are older people who kind of come back around to a more introspective state. So they may well come back for you, Jeremy.
I hope so. I definitely think things have turned more introspective in the end of last year and beginning of this year, so I would welcome that.
Great. Okay, well, thanks so much for calling. I really wish you well with your family. And is there anything else that you want to share about this experiences here with your mom or around dreaming?
Probably not. It was fun. I think, the more people are aware about it, the better off we'd all be. So I'm just glad y'all are taking the time to discuss it, and hopefully we can get some more awareness to it.
Absolutely. I feel the same. Thanks so much, Jeremy. Take care.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. All
right. Okay, that's wonderful. I love that, though, to have bringing dreaming into the family, kind of making a family tradition. And I do hope we can make it more of a cultural tradition, which is, as I mentioned, is one of the purposes of the show, is to make talking about dreams more normal and more interesting. Because it is a wonderful way to approach life, because the dreams come from us. If we're wanting to learn to be a better person or to be happier in life, rather than listening to somebody outside of ourselves, why not tune into our dreams?
Absolutely. My sister is an attorney, and this kind of thing is not often what she's the most interested or comfortable with, but I get calls from her periodically, and she'll, start off with, I know you don't have a lot of time, but, when you want to talk, I did have a dream. And it's always smile. But, yes, I do think encouraging the conversations is really important because it's a valuable source of information and a valuable source of happiness for us.
Yes, I find that as well, for sure. So, Suzanne, I wanted to get to this experience of dream telepathy that you kind of teased me with in one of our emails, and I wonder if you'd like to share that. What is that for you?
So, I did not really know anything about it. If I can kind of set a little bit of a stage, I've always been very open to something beyond our waking senses or whatever. That's not unusual for me. I acknowledge that, and I'm comfortable with that. And I had been in several groups with other women where it was sort of a meditative type of group, and we would actually, during the process, began to share a vision of a certain situation as we were meditating. One of them was actually a prayer group where we would pray about the things that we began to share or see jointly. So that kind of thing was not foreign to me, but I began having dreams a couple times a week where this particular individual I felt like was trying to talk to me or come into my dream. I'll be honest, at the time, because I didn't understand it, it felt invasive, and it was a little frightening because I knew it was not just a dream, but I didn't really know what it was. And so I will say this was not a good situation of it, but what it did is it confirmed to me that it does happen and you can do it. And so it happened, I guess, several times over a period of maybe 2 or 3 months. And finally, I said something to the individual about it, and I kind of started out with, I keep having these really strange dreams with you in them. And the individual smiled immediately, and I knew there was something more to it. And, in fact, they had been taking time during the night at those times when I was dreaming or thought I was dreaming to meditate and to enter into my dreams. And I would not have believed it, I think, unless it had happened, and then I tried to figure out what was going on. And so what we did is agreed to, I would keep a journal of when it occurred to me, and the person would keep a journal of when they did it, the times and stuff like that, and then we would compare. And afterwards, after we came back together, I realized, yes, this is doable. It's happening because I could see for myself. Here it was. The dates were the same without us having, talked during the time that it happened. So, it's one of those things that I didn't understand, and I still am not real sure that I know I understand it completely, but I can't dispute it at this point.
Do you think that they were deliberately trying to reach you in some way while they were meditating, or was it kind of incidental that just you happened to pop into their head?
No, it was not incidental.
Okay.
It was intentional. And that's why I say it wasn't necessarily the best use of this because it was without my permission.
Yeah.
And, so I experienced it as very invasive. And in the beginning, few times, the things that I would say in my dreams were things like, what do you want from me? What are you doing? Why are you here? Why do you keep coming here?
Right.
And I even spent time trying to figure out what that dream meant, and then come to find out that this was something that the individual was doing intentionally in a meditative yoga practice.
Wow. That is a little creepy. I wouldn't want just anybody to be able to invade my dreams like that. So interesting to know that that's possible. I mean, I could see that would have positive uses, but in this case, it was, as you say, not with your consent.
No, it was somebody that I was friends with, and so it wasn't just a stranger or anything. I mean, this person, I knew this person, I liked them, in, I trusted them in waking state, but this was just not something we'd ever talked about, and I don't know that I would have ever done something like this with another person, without their permission, or I don't know. It was very strange for me at the time, but it was also a positive thing because I was glad to know that it was possible and to begin to kind of explore it. I've never had the opportunity to try to enter into another person's dreams intentionally since then. It just hasn't been a situation that I've had, and so that I can't say much more other than that I'm a believer, if you will,
right?
Because and I know it happened, and I didn't know that it was happening until afterwards. I didn't understand what it was.
Interesting. Well, thank you very much for sharing that. That's something then to keep in mind. Like I sometimes will like, if somebody I know shows up in my dream, I might consider giving them a call. In this case, maybe they were trying to get in touch with me. So I want to say that we have another caller. That we have, Ray from Santa Cruz. Thanks for calling the Dream Journal.
Hi, Catherine. Am I online?
Yep, you're online. We can hear you. You're on the air.
All right, thanks. Hey, you've already answered a few of my questions about the telepathic possibilities of dreaming.
Right.
Is
that a little synchronistic? You were going to ask about that, and we just immediately started that topic as you called before we even started the topic. Interesting.
Yeah. I know. I was kind of waiting to hear some of that, and you have explained a few of the things. I'm just wondering, including one of them that you said you haven't really had the opportunity to do it since then, because that was something that I'm really interested in, is how would one actually go about that if, you had permission from both parties and we're trying to, get our subconscious minds together while we sleep, you know what I mean, to try and benefit our conscious daily lives?
So, like, if you were going to set up an experiment, something like that, what would you do? Is that kind of the question, Ray?
Yeah, pretty much, right.
What do you think, Suzanne?
I was just thinking, I said that I hadn't had the opportunity to do it much since that time, and that's not exactly true. Jeremy and I actually do connect in ways occasionally that, when I do wake up, I'll pick up the phone and I'll call him and say, okay, this is what I dreamed, and he will have been worrying or something. I don't know that he actually intentionally enters my dream. I'm not real sure what to describe it as, but obviously it's the connection that you have with somebody that you trust and love. But if we do it just from a pure experimental aspect, you would just have to set some structures so that you would not, the other person wouldn't know exactly and be led to say that this happened just because they knew the timing or something like that. There would need to be some kind of like some blind characteristics so that both of you were unaware of what was happening or when.
Well, this is something. I'm sorry. I was just thinking about the IESD conference, and you were there last year, Suzanne Maniss. We're having another conference in June in Ashland with the IASD, and they do a Dream Telepathy contest, which seems a little bit like this kind of experiment.
That's exactly right, and I'd forgotten about that at the conference, but you're right. And just the idea of having a topic or something, and then seeing or an action, and then seeing how many people are able to tune in with that.
Well, the way that they set it up at the IASD is that they choose a picture, and then one person is like a sender, and they look at the picture and they think of the picture, and they like try to send to everybody in the conference the image of the picture as accurately as they can, and then people sleep, and they and in the morning they collect dreams from people who want to participate in the contest, and they see whose dream is closest to the picture that is being sent, this image. And so the idea is,
I think that.
Yeah, go ahead, Ray.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
No, go ahead, Ray.
Well, I think that's. But I was thinking about one thing kind of beyond that, where that's the conscious mind kind of controlling the so-called experiment. I'm thinking of it as a little bit beyond an experiment, as more of an actual experience that could help us while we wake. But
what would you do, Ray? What would you do?
Well, I'm just thinking about that. If the unconscious mind was actually in control of it, and then instead of a picture, I was thinking at first of maybe a message, like one person has the message in mind to see if they could get that to the other person, but then that's still the conscious mind controlling it. So then I thought, what about if you go to sleep and I pray a lot and ask for guidance and stuff like that, and maybe if I had this a little bit of a revelation of some sort, or either party, if it was myself or the other person, had any kind of a revelation during our sleep, that we could kind of touch bases and see if that same thing came through. And the part of it, I guess it would be an experiment, would be to know that the two of us were, trying to concentrate at that time. So I understand what you were saying a little while ago, too, about wanting to do it blindly, and so you can't say that the time, you can't really say, I guess, when it would happen, because a person might say, oh, yeah, I got that. It happened at 12:14, Tuesday the 15th or whatever, right? But if the blind part of it was actually the message that was directed by the subconscious to see if the two of you could get the same message. So, but kind of what time you go to bed with your intention to capture a message and be able to share it, but not knowing what the message is.
Oh, so see if you would is that like co-dreaming, like dreaming the same dream? Is that the kind of thing you're getting at?
Sounds like it.
Yeah,
kind of.
Ray,
Ray,
go ahead, Suzanne.
I'm sorry. I haven't had that experience like that with dreams, but I have had a similar experience, so I'm thinking it's probably possible. When I mentioned in the beginning that I was part of a group with several women where we would just come into a room and to begin meditating or prayer and wait for all of us to receive an image, the same image that then we would either pray or talk about, do something about. And that was possible. We were in the same room, and again, I probably would not have believed it, that you could do it until I did it in over a couple of years with this particular group, and it was really phenomenal, the experience, and how quickly, once we'd been doing it for a while, the group was able to begin to have the same image in our meditation without mentioning anything, just coming in and sitting down.
Wow, that's really, really interesting. This is quite remarkable. So, Ray, thank you so much for calling. It's good to hear your voice. I haven't heard from you in a little while. I'm glad you called today.
Hey. And hey, thank you for that workshop that you helped set up with Andy, too. That was really amazing, and I'd like to talk to you about that sometime.
Absolutely.
I got some great revelations.
Oh, good. Yeah, let's chat.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot. Thanks to both of you.
All right, thanks, Ray. Bye. So, Suzanne Maniss, this is, I'm wondering if folks can get in touch with you, if you're open to that. What would you recommend for a webpage, or they can also just contact me and I can put them in touch with you if that's your preference?
That would be great if you would do that, if you wouldn't mind.
Not at all. And I'm at Catherine at ksqd.org. That's KATHERINE at ksqd.org. I wonder if you have any final thoughts for our listeners, Suzanne, as we wrap up.
I know that your listeners don't need to be convinced that of the significance or importance of dreams. And I guess, like we were saying, helping to get this more into our everyday culture. I think we've forgotten sometimes that there are ways to know ourselves and to know one another that we've lost touch with. And I'd like to see us bring some of this back, to be more aware of our bodies in place and context with our world. And we get too hurried, too frantic with everyday life, with things that are going on. We need to slow down and listen, because I think it will improve the activities that we need to be involved in other ways in our lives. So I like that you brought the idea of keeping the cultural value of it there, and that we can be a part of that.
Excellent. Thank you so much. This is Professor Suzanne Maniss, and it's so good to have you on the show.
Thank you, Catherine. It's a joy. I look forward to seeing you again in Oregon.
That's right, up in Ashland, Oregon in June for the IASD conference. We'll be hearing lots more about IASD conferences for the next month or two. We'll have presenters. Next week, we will have a presenter called Carrington Brown of the Inner Work Center of Richmond, Virginia. If you'd like to join the conversation live, tune in Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. at the ksqd.org live stream. The podcast replay was released every Monday on the Monday following the show. So I am Catherine Bell, and this has been the Dream Journal. Thanks for listening. You can find out more about my own dream coaching practice at experientialdreamwork.com. You can email me, as I mentioned, at catherine@ksqd.org. The Dream Journal is produced in the studios of KSQD in Santa Cruz, California. Archives and 24/7 live stream at ksqd.org. I'd like to thank Rick Kleffel, engineer and music creator. You can find the ambient music at pandemiad.com. Thank Tony Rissimano for the phones, Eva Milady for audio editing, and in-studio companionship and support. Intro music is Water Over Stones. Outro music is Everything, both by Mood Science. Tomorrow morning when you wake up, take a minute to write down your dream and bring it to the next Dream Journal.
There's a time in our life, all the husbands and wives, all the boys and the girls, and everyone in the world knows that so much is wrong, but much more is right. We see in the darkness by shining